Hi there, welcome to another episode of She and Success. And in this episode, I am joined by clinical psychologist Dr. Shahrzad Jalali, and she discusses her insights on the hidden costs of being high achieving and high functioning. Let's get into it. Hello, Dr. Jalali.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here on She and Success. And we're very excited to have you on board and looking forward to discussing the work that you do, which is so important, and the kind of challenges that you're looking to support women through, and also your new book, The Fire That Makes Us.
Thank you for having me. The pleasure is all mine.
So, for people who are discovering you right now or hearing of you for the first time through this conversation, what are the kind of key themes and key challenges that you're working with people through in your practice?
Yes, I'm a clinical psychologist based in Southern California, Newport Beach, and I would say we run a very boutique private practice that focuses on more than anything, if I want to give it a non clinical umbrella term, self discovery. Because
Mm.
what I've noticed over the years is a lot of what brings people to do inner work or therapy is to problem solve. So
Right.
something has caused a problem in their lives, or they're going through a tough time experiencing emotions like, let's say, anxiety or depression, which makes them want to essentially seek some help and fix the problem.
Right.
However, what we do is a layer deeper than that. So we help the individual discover what parts of themselves work against them and cause them to remain in these patterns, in these identified components of grief, and what parts of them actually are essentially more stable, more functional parts that they can rely on to achieve their goals, achieve their desires, and take them towards their ideal states of being. So
Mm.
it's more of a personality change than your general component of therapy,
Mm.
because we do more depth oriented work that helps you delve more inward.
Your work is very much bringing together that combination of clinical psychology, depth psychology, executive coaching. You're obviously working with very high functioning, high achieving individuals. What are some of the challenges that you feel people are struggling with, or some of the patterns that you see presenting themselves quite often that people are struggling with?
I would say one of the main patterns that is actually very interesting to me is, as you pointed out, I work with very high functioning adults,
Mm.
which also essentially targets that stigma that people that go to therapy are people who are lost or don't know what to do with their lives or are not functioning well.
Mm.
I want to say the people that come to our practice, it's not that they don't know how to function. On the contrary, they actually function really well. However, what they notice is most of the time they reach that midlife range where they have accomplished things that they thought would bring them satisfaction. They bought the house, they had the kids, they found a partner, they built the business, and all of a sudden they found themselves in this space where they're questioning everything, everything that they ever wanted, everything that they thought would bring them happiness, their idea of happiness, whether or not this is achievable, or searching for meaning in regards to what was the point of all this, because nothing in life comes just easily, no matter what your background is. So to achieve all of that, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of discipline, a lot of essentially um, letting go of certain moments or needs or goals has to happen. So after they do all of this, they all of a sudden get to this point that, now what? I still don't feel great. I still don't feel like, that inner void inside of me is filled. And what was the point? What will happen for the remainder of my life?
Mm.
And that's the soul searching we end up doing with them.
So, in terms of the book, then, what kind of prompted that, and what conversations are you hoping to really ignite through the book? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so the book is kind of my baby. It's a very
Mhm.
a personal dynamic for me per se, because it's based on a trauma that I endured myself. I was in a car accident with my family, And my father passed in that car accident, and I was very severely injured as a result of it. Went through months and months of recovery, not to mention the grief of loss and how it impacted my family dynamic. And as I was doing my own soul searching, I was a clinical psychologist at the time and going through modalities or ways that would help me come to terms with this, go into acceptance. Essentially, the term that we use in everyday life, move on, because I felt stuck. I felt like there was a part of my soul, a part of my psyche that couldn't let this go, even though logically it made complete sense to me. Everyone dies some way in life. Bad accidents happen all the time. So logically, it made complete sense. But emotionally, I was stuck in, why me? Why did this have to happen to me? Why this way, right? So I went through all these different modalities and seeked all kind of treatments, which were all very helpful at the time. But eventually, I actually find a lot of refuge in writing when I'm trying to process a piece of information or sometimes emotions. I like to write out my feelings around it. So I was just doing my own writing, my own journaling. One of my sisters at one point read a part of it and said, "You need to publish this. This will help a lot of people." So I based the main kind of storyline of the book on a fictional character named Charlotte, who's actually a psychologist and dealing with people's trauma, as I do in real life. And one component of the book is about the tragedy she has endured and how to come to terms with it. The other component is something that I see a lot in my clinical practice, which is relational trauma. People tend to get in a lot of relationships that don't work for them. They don't know how to come out of it. They feel stuck in it. They keep on dating the wrong people. They feel like they have, a bad way of picking people. They feel like they can't find their person. So that is one of the main things I battle with a lot in my practice with the clientele I see. And the other component of the book is Charlotte bringing herself out of a very negative relational dynamic. And eventually, when she's able to make peace with that and let that go, finding the person that is, potentially going to be her life partner and going forward. Now, the book tells the storyline, but at the end of each chapter, I stop and I explain the psychology behind what this dilemma that this person is going through is and how to overcome that. So I would say that is the difference between this book per se and the rest of the self-help books out there, because they're mainly just informational, telling you what to do, but maybe you can't relate to that component initially to be able to, look for refuge and how to resolve it. But my hope was the storyline can blend the psychology and the emotional dynamic that we all kind of go through as we're dealing with challenges.
Thank you so much. Thank you for writing that book. Your sister was absolutely right, because so many people are going through these types of challenges. And as you say, when you're in it, and I also have kind of gone through a very similar thing. It wasn't a car accident, but I lost my brother in a very challenging way. And even though, as you say, when you said it, it really hit me, because I thought that's so true. In your mind, of course, everybody goes, but it doesn't make it easy to move forward. And even for you, I think hearing that now, it's probably kind of comforting to people, because as a clinical psychologist, you're working with people on these sorts of challenges day in and day out. It's still challenging for you. So it's not, there's nobody that's exempt, is what I'm saying.
Very true. Yes, very true. And sometimes understanding that, especially in the world today where, a lot of our sense of self is based in comparisons of
Mm-hmm.
tiny little pictures we see on TikTok and Instagram of people's blissful lives and comparing it to the tragedy in our own lives. I think it's
So
very
true.
important to see the reality of humans, that there is no human being. One thing I've learned through my 15 years of clinical experience is that there is not one human being that enters this life and leaves it unscarred. We don't have such a thing. The life experience is intertwined with suffering. That doesn't mean we have to suffer through every moment, but the moment we accept that, we let go of this bliss idea of happiness all the time. Happiness is a state of mind that we fall into in between the hardships of lives, which is amazing and we enjoy it, but we're not meant to stay in that. all the time, unless you're not getting challenged on an everyday basis through your in-laws and your kind of work and your physical challenges and mental challenges and everything else.
I love it. I love it. So true. So true. When you find out how to go through life without those challenges, contact us. We want to know about it. So let's shift now, because one of the themes that comes through in your work, and you've written about, is, and we talked about the fact that you're working with high functioning, smart individuals. They've got it together on the outside, but actually inside, they may be actually struggling. They may be kind of falling apart. Talk to us about this. Why is this something that is happening to so many, particularly high functioning women? What is happening and what's causing this?
I love that question because this is something no one ever talks about. I've written a lot of articles about this, and I like to bring a lot of attention to it because I think it's very important. Nothing in life comes, especially no success, without sacrifice. When we see people who are successful, whatever success is to us, I'm using this word very loosely here because it's such a personal component. Imagine someone who has a perfect body because they work out every day at the gym very rigorously. Imagine someone who's built a very successful business. Imagine someone who has a very successful marriage, whatever you want to call success, comes at a price. Right? That price is often from a psychological component. It's not always negative, but a lot of times it's sacrificing even a part of yourself. We do these things in the short term to reach the things we want, and they're wonderful. But at one point, if we don't know how to deal with them, they catch up with us. For example, let me give you a very general example. Let's say I'm a very well-liked person. Part of the reason that I am well-liked is I always say yes to people. I go out of my way to not disappoint people. I try to meet everyone's needs. Now, how do I do that? At the expense of my own, right? So I go through life this way. Everyone says, oh, she's so sweet. She's so nice. And then I hear that. Obviously, I love hearing it. So I don't want to disidentify with that. So I do more of that sacrifice, right? And eventually I get to a point that I don't even recognize myself anymore because, yes, I built this facade. It feels amazing. Everyone loves me. But do I love myself? Am I happy? Am I content? Am I in a state of mind that's thriving? No. I am in a state of mind that's exhausted. I have abandoned my own needs for a very long time in order to make other people happy. So at this point, what I have to do is I have to drop that facade, which is usually very, very, very painful for people. Because imagine, as a person who's always said yes, now that I start saying no, everyone's going to hate me. I mean, more so than the average person, because they know they can come to me for help, right? So all of a sudden, my relationships are going to get essentially changed. They're going to start questioning me. Some people may not want to be my friend anymore. I'm going to lose people. I'm going to lose that constant validation of being a good person. And I've identified with that. So that's going to be very difficult for me. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a process of letting go, grieving the old self. Sometimes people even feel bad for the parts of themselves they sacrifice. So they have to really grieve that very intensely. And then giving birth to a new component, a new archetypal state of me that feels more aligned with who I am at this moment.
I love that. And the fact that you said that you may have to actually grieve the parts of you that you sacrificed is actually something that's really important to sit with, isn't it? Because while you're in it, you obviously weren't thinking about it, you were just doing it. But as soon as you actually come out of that state, or recognize or choose to acknowledge fully what's happened, then it can be very painful, no doubt. Definitely.
Absolutely.
Wow. And so for people who may be in that situation and who might be hearing this conversation, I mean, in fact, let's take it back a step. So what are some of these signs? And I think you said, for a start, you could be in all kinds of situations and this is happening underneath the surface. There's not one archetype of, okay, you've got this high flying business, this is you. It could be anything, because as you said, you could be in a relationship where you've always said yes. It could be absolutely anything. What are some of the signs that actually something might need to be done? You might need to start making some changes. What do people need to start kind of looking out for, or at least acknowledging?
To tell you the truth, they're very simple. One of the things that I hear people continuously talk about, especially women, is fatigue. Even though I don't do a lot, I feel continuously fatigued.
Mm,
Another one is mood disorders.
right.
I don't enjoy the things I used to enjoy in life.
Mm,
Like there are things that I really used to find refuge in. For example, they're very mundane things. Going to get my nails done.
mm,
Now it feels like a chore. Now I have to go do that too, you know.
mm,
Feeling anxious. Like I'm invited to a gathering tonight, but I start feeling very um, emotionally challenged around it. I want to avoid it. I feel like I have a lot of social anxiety. Feeling depressed, feeling numb is a big one.
mm,
I can't really connect to people. I feel out of place. I feel like I'm in the wrong body.
right.
I feel like life is happening to me versus me having a sense of agency over my life. I feel like life is just a bunch of repeated days that kind of like Groundhog Day that just come and go, and I'm just going through the motions, and it's not really going in the direction that I had hoped it will. And then you ask them, well, what is that direction? And they say, I don't know. I
Right.
just thought I'd be happy.
Mm. And I imagine there's a lot of people hearing this that might be thinking, yep, I can put my hand up to more than a
Mhm.
few of those things. Definitely, definitely, which is why it's good that we're having this conversation. And so, if somebody is in that situation, obviously, please do go and seek help and go and find a clinical psychologist. But what are some of the other things that people may need to, or could do? Tiny, tiny little thing that might be starting to help themselves reconnect back with themselves. Because I think one of the things you've alluded to is this disconnection from the self and this self-abandonment. If you have abandoned yourself for so long, how do you find your way back? What is that process, and what's it look like?
You know, I think never in the history of humans
Mm,
has it been so easy to disconnect with yourself,
mm,
because we have so many different ways of disconnection. I mean, just with a iPhone alone, you can spend an entire day disconnected from everything and everyone while thinking you're actually connecting, right?
yeah,
We are continuously bombarding our nervous system with information, whether it's through our relationships with the people that we're in touch with, messages, phone calls, podcasts, even I think one of the things that I hear a lot about nowadays that I have my own essentially feelings about is self improvement. Even that has become this over correcting, over
mm,
stimulating, essentially component that intellectuals partake in. We are continuously absorbing a lot of information that's coming to us through media, through news. And all of this is wonderful in its own way. But what it's doing is every time we expose ourselves to one of this, a new loop is opening in our mind that we don't necessarily close.
mm,
So, continuously in the back of our head, there are all these questions. Where am I behind in life? Who's doing better than I am? What vacation am I missing? Um, what's happening in the world? What do I need to fix? All these open ended questions that we never have time to consolidate because we go from one source of information to the other. And one thing I found myself being um, guilty of lately. My husband and I are both professionals. We're both very busy with our work. And one of the things we're continuously complaining to each other about is there's so much information out there that we want to consume, but we don't have time to do so. So we both have a list of articles every time that we want to read, or a list of podcasts that we want to listen to. So even in my down times, I always have something playing in the background,
mm,
which is probably one of the most wrong things to do, because I'm not getting my brain, I'm not giving my brain the ability to consolidate, to rest, and to go into creation. Creativity only comes from rest.
mm.
So when I'm continuously consuming, I can't create. Now, creativity and connection are connected. So when I rest, I go into creativity. When I go into creativity, I connect to myself, to you, to the rest of the world. And that's where things start to happen.
Mm.
But the problem with the world today is we are all lost in consumption. So we never have time for the rest. And we all complain of not having enough time.
So true. I was smiling there when you're talking about having articles that you've saved and podcasts. It's like this, you keep saving them. You'll get to it at some point, but
Yeah,
the time never comes, does it? I love it.
I know. I know.
So, from what you've said, it sounds like we might need to start switching off a little bit. It sounds like that seems to be one of the
Absolutely.
remedies.
Absolutely. I think this is what we all need to do to some extent, especially those of us who are more type A
Mm.
individuals and kind of value our production a lot. I recently taped a segment for my YouTube channel regarding how productivity used to be the main component of the old world, that everyone just wanted to be as productive as possible.
Yeah.
And the new one that we have to define is actually taking care of your attention, not
Mm.
allowing different resources to grab your attention, and keeping your mind space clean so it can, do what it's supposed to do. It's no longer about continuously producing stuff anymore.
I love that. Definitely. There's plenty of production happening, isn't it? Plenty of that, which
Correct.
means there's plenty of consumption happening. So, love it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, I guess onward, in regards to one of the things that we were talking about, which is people that are high functioning, high performing, doing really well externally, but then they're struggling on the inside. What do you think makes it so that so many women struggle with this? Because I do think that there's maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like as women, there's kind of these invisible pressures, these invisible, I don't even know, something that's there that kind of takes you to a certain place that leads to some of these challenges that we're talking about. Is what I'm saying resonating with some of the things that you witness or some of the conversations that you have for women specifically?
Well, what you're talking about is neurological as well as societal.
Mm.
Neurological in the sense that as women, for centuries we've given birth. As such, our brains have learned to put somebody else's needs before our own, because the human child will not survive without somebody tending to them properly, right? So women have learned to sacrifice their own needs. Like if our child is hungry, we let go, we kind of bypass our own sleep. If we're
Mm.
tired, we let go of our own rest and we go tend to our child, right? So the female brain has learned to do that, whereas the male brain has not needed to do that as much. So it doesn't necessarily have that component associated with it.
Mm.
And then the societal part is that women have been in the workforce very seriously for the past 100 years. Prior to that, they were kind of mostly assigned a different role from a societal perspective. So, as anyone who has imagined in a company, the newcomer has more to prove than the person who's been working in this company for the past, I don't know, 20 years, right? Because they feel like people don't know how good I am. I need to prove myself. I need to prove my worth. So, societally, as women, I think we all carry this because still, no matter how much advancements we have achieved, I think we live in a man's world for the
Mm.
most part, where women are viewed as, I hate to say this as a woman myself, but there's still this notion that we're less than.
Mm.
So we carry this in the back of our heads and we have more to prove. So I even see it in the workforce. The way females produce at work, in
Mm.
my opinion, is more intense than the way I see my male clients, thinking of production. It's
Mm.
because I think society puts a different burden on us, or at least we put it on ourselves.
Yeah. What permission do you feel that women need to give themselves, or that we can give each other now, to start to kind of alleviate some of these things? What are some of these things?
I think the female brain is one of the most amazing dynamics in this world. The way it can manage and multitask and, bring things together and produce and nurture and love. So I don't think we give ourselves as much credit as we deserve. As I said, we kind of got lost in a man's world at one point, and we are trying to prove our worth. Whereas I think if you just sit back and watch, it's so evident that nothing needs to be proven, essentially. So if we allow ourselves to be
Mm.
instead of to do, I think a lot more greatness can even come to be as a result of that. But maybe we need to talk about this more. Maybe we need to bring more attention to it because it's very easy to get lost in that chase for success or productivity or making a name for yourself or anything else that goes with that domain in life. And I don't think we place enough value in our nurturing and being state as much, which is, I think, the most powerful asset women have.
I love that. I love that. That was a very unexpected answer, but it's definitely kind of food for thought, isn't it? Because you're right. We live in a very do type of society, and it's kind of ingrained within us, isn't it? And when you do have that downtime, you feel kind of there's that guilt of like,
Correct.
oh my goodness, what am I doing just sitting here?
Yes,
Definitely.
exactly.
And so, in terms of then, from your perspective, are there any other key things that you would say you hope to draw out from your book? Because I love the fact that you said there's key lessons. So, do you want to give us maybe one or two kind of little tidbits from the book of lessons that you feel are worth, people really sticking with at this point?
Yes, I think one of the most important things I wanted people to get from the book, that this is something, because a lot of our patients actually do have a background in trauma.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's possible to be a human and bypass some form of trauma throughout your lifetime. When we talk about trauma, people usually think about the big T's, like if you were assaulted or if you were, kind of in an earthquake or something very huge. But
Mm.
essentially, growing up with a mother who was depressed is a form of trauma. Growing up with an workaholic father is a trauma.
Mm.
So it's almost impossible to get through life and become an adult without having endured some form of trauma.
Mm.
And as I work with people with these trauma scripts, one thing I've come to learn is these scripts dominate people's lives because we identify with them and we find comfort in them. So, to simplify it, imagine I grew up in a chaotic household. That chaos is more familiar to me than any kind of calm. So, even though I say I hate the chaos, I want to escape it, I'm looking for calm, my nervous system gets attracted to, that saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Mm.
My nervous system gets attracted to that dynamic because it feels familiar, it feels safe, even though logically I contradict it.
Mm.
So I would repeatedly find myself in more patterns of that nature, more relationships that create chaos for me. And if you were to put a calm person in front of me, I'd probably, give it a try and be like, you know what? I'm not attracted to this person. I don't know why. They're very nice on paper, but I just don't have that je ne sais quoi. It just doesn't work.
Love it.
Whereas it has nothing to do with that. It's absolutely a nervous system response.
Mm.
And I guess my message is this: do not let your trauma patterns dictate your life. There is another way. You can re narrate these patterns for yourself, which would put you in a position of power so that you gain agency over your life. And your life isn't this thing that's happening to you anymore. Your life is this thing that to the best of your ability, to the extent that we have control, because I do understand that our notion of control in this lifetime is very limited, but that we can navigate it in the direction that we want. And I think that was my hope for writing the book, and that was the main message I was trying to get across.
I love that. That's so powerful. What you said about the fact that you mentioned that there's comfort in these things. So sometimes the very things that we're desperately feel that we want to get away from, on some level, they're obviously providing us, well, it's familiarity from what you said, is the familiarity. So
Yes.
one of the things you kind of come, there's two things. One is identity, and one is kind of the nervous system piece. I just want to cover those a little bit, because I think the identity topic is so huge in that people are identifying with things, and it's what's kind of causing them to get stuck in these patterns. For example, what, as a kind of clinical psychologist, and you're working with people across all kinds of challenges and experiences, I guess how easy or how difficult, or to what extent can we, I guess, disidentify, if that's even a word, disidentify, stop identifying with things, what is that, does that process look like? Because from what you've said to me, it sounds like that is something that must happen in order for you to be able to then move forward in the way that you might want to.
Yes, all of these components are essentially connected in the root.
Mm.
So we come to identify with something because we're exposed to it, because we lived through it, because it's part of our life story, and because it's been the most prominent thing in our lives, right? And then our nervous system learns to respond to that. So our nervous system gets formed with our life experience, right? So if I have a very reactive nervous system, it's because I was put in many, many situations where I had to pace myself and defend myself,
Right.
right? So all of these things have come to now shape and form who I am and how I function as an adult. And that's the version of me my ego recognizes and understands. Now, I put together a course called Regulate to Rise, which helps people essentially reset their nervous systems. They have it's 8 modules of very simple nervous system exercises that you can do on a daily basis to essentially help yourself reduce that excess, um, I guess, commotion in your nervous system and learn how to bring it back to normal levels of functioning. So with time, it can find refuge in staying in that ideal level of functioning, essentially. So even if you do go through something and you become reactive, you can jump back and find your base point quicker. I think these things go hand in hand. The more we learn to regulate ourselves, the more we can handle situations better, the more we show up in a state of alertness and capability, the more we exercise our abilities in a situation. And the more we do that, the more we identify with this version of us that can handle situations well. And then maybe we can re-narrate, whatever negative association we had from it in the past. So I wouldn't say there's one way of going about this that perfectly takes care of everything. I think it's a multifaceted dynamic. It works with our body, our psyche, our soul, our psychology, our cognition, all of that. But it's definitely hard work. However, I think anything worth having in this life is effortful. So the moment you decide you've had enough of whatever it is that you're living in, that's the moment that you're willing to do the work and take yourself to the next level.
I love that. And I'm glad you mentioned your course there, Regulate to Rise, because yes, one of the things I mentioned in addition to the identity piece was the nervous system piece, which
Mhm.
has been an ongoing, I guess, thread through
Literally.
everything that you've talked about. So it sounds like that is really at the heart of a lot of it, given the fact that
Correct.
it's shaped through all of these early experiences that people are going through. Wowza. With on the nervous system piece, and I do want to touch on your regulatorize course a little bit more before we close off. But in terms of the nervous system piece, one of the things that got me thinking was, I know people talk about, burnout or stress or these types of things. I guess how much of it is the workload and everything that's happening out here versus some other thing internally, whether it's the nervous system or some other pattern that people may not be aware of in your experience? Are we kind of labeling things as stress and burnout, but actually that's not what it is?
You know what? I think if you have a very regulated nervous system, you can actually catch where you've had enough
Right.
and you can redirect yourself really well,
Mm.
right? The whole point of regulating your nervous system is figuring out what's happening at in your body at any given time
Mm-hmm.
and learning to respond to the cues your body throws at you.
Right.
Now, people who have difficulty doing this override these messages. Hence, they end up taking on more than they can chew. They end up doing things that puts them above and beyond their ability to regulate well.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do that over a long period of time, eventually we experience burnout. So I guess the key is to learn to do this more methodically, and then you'll avoid all those negative stressors. Because I mean, we can't go through life without stress. So, if we can't get rid of the problem, we have to learn how to solve the problem. And in order to learn how to solve the problem, we have to understand the problem. And in order to understand it, we have to understand ourselves, our psyche, and our body. And most people have no understanding of themselves at all. In fact, I've met very sophisticated, very educated people in my practice that I've asked, "How are you doing?" And they said, "Fine." And I said, "Imagine I don't know what that word is and tell me how you're doing." And they said, "Well, fine." And when I insisted, they said, "I don't know."
Wow. And I guess that's really indicative of the level of disconnection that so many people are going through and are feeling and are experiencing. From your perspective, would you say that learning to understand the self is really the kind of beginning, or where people need to go back to? It sounds like that's kind of quite a key piece of the work that you do.
I would say the most simple way to do this is learning to understand your body.
Right.
Just like if you're sitting down right now, notice, is the position I'm sitting in comfortable?
Mm.
Do I want to move anything? Do I want to move my feet, my legs? Do I want to maybe have the support of a pillow on my back?
Mm.
Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Did I sleep well last night? Just very basic questions that we continuously override the needs of our body in order to survive life.
Right.
I cannot tell you, even as a clinical psychologist, how many times I've skipped lunch or breakfast or something because I had a patient that needed to be seen. Not that I regret my choice, but my point is we always put other people's needs before our own.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as women, we're very much guilty of this. The men are a little bit better at this, I have to admit. I mean, we call it selfishness, but from a clinical perspective, it's actually a very healthy thing.
Definitely, definitely. So yeah, so it's getting back into the body, getting back to actually listening to the body sounds like one of the biggest messages. Would you say that that's a big takeaway that you want people to come away with from this conversation and from the work that you're doing?
I would say it's the simplest way. So,
Mm.
yes, start with your body.
Mm-hmm.
The mind is a little bit more complicated.
Cool.
We have to learn to understand the language of the unconscious and how to interpret it. So, when we get to the mind, we definitely, I don't want to say definitely, I believe there are people who can do it on their own, but it's wise to go through it with a guide
Mm.
because the mind can get very dark and very deep, and we can very easily get lost in it. So, it's best to navigate it with someone who has an understanding of the language of the unconscious, your dreams, your fantasies, and can help you interpret the messages more wisely so that you can extract that gold that you're looking for. But the body is very simple, and we don't need to, have any kind of special powers to identify our own needs in our body. All we have to do is listen and pay attention to things that, from a societal perspective, we're not really good at doing.
That's so true. That's so true. And if we are listening and we're paying attention, then I guess uh, what would you say people need to look out for? Because I know we talked about some things to look out for earlier, and you said there's some very simple things.
Mhm.
Are there things within the body that go beyond, as you said, maybe a bit of discomfort or a bit of something happening there that isn't too much? But are there other things that you would say, okay, there are some specific things to look out for within the body that if you notice or recognize these things or these things happening on a regular basis, then there's your warning sign?
Well, I would say check your breath.
Mm-hmm,
Notice if you hold your breath at any given moment.
mm-hmm,
Check pain. Notice if you house a lot of pain in your body. Check for restlessness. Notice if there's a lot of excessive movement in the body.
mm-hmm,
Check for the opposite. Notice if there's a lot of like numbness and lack of movement in the body. Notice how your belly feels. Are there a lot of butterflies? Do you kind of have a lot of that fear response where you feel like your stomach is about to fall, kind of like you feel when you're about to have an accident or something? Just be aware and
mm-hmm.
listen to the body. I don't want to assign too much meaning to it, because when I do so, I take away from people's personal association with it. So I like to leave it very open ended so people can really go inward and look for their own cues. When I give them a lot of language, they get lost in my language and then they bypass their own internal cues. But I just gave those as an example so people know what to look for.
What would you want everybody who's listening to kind of go away from this conversation? What's the biggest takeaway?
You are not the victim of life.
Mm,
You are given life as a gift, and you owe it to yourself and all your loved ones to live it to the best of your ability and enjoy it to the best of your ability. Now, I understand that we all have different challenges depending on where we're born, who we're born to, what level of blessings we encounter as children, what we're deprived of. All of that makes a difference. I'm not suggesting we live in a fair world necessarily,
mm.
but the fairness is this: we all have the ability to take the experience that we have and optimize it. And we all have the ability to take the experience that we have and limit it. So remind yourself of that ability and don't let yourself get away with it.
I love that. That's a fantastic takeaway. Thank you so much, Dr. Jalali. What's the
My
best
pleasure.
way people can kind of find out more about your work?
I would say the best resource is our website, drshahrzadjalali.com. Um, our private practices are under Align Remedy and Dr. Jalali and Associates here in Newport.
Mhm.
Both have websites. You can reach us through them as well. I try to do a lot of informational videos on social media. Our YouTube channel and Instagram, I believe, are under Align Remedy.
Mhm.
And then the TikTok is under Dr. Jalali Saidi, I believe.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of resources in the community as far as wellness is concerned. So, not just our stuff, I want to invite everyone to look for ways to enhance their life experience, their mental, their physical experiences in any way or shape that they can. And I hope that our practices, our information can play a little role in providing that form of education for everyone as well.
So thank you so much for your fantastic work, and it's been lovely to have you on.
I appreciate it. It was lovely being here.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Jalali. Everything that we've discussed, including all of her links, will be in the show notes page for this episode, including her book, The Fire That Makes Us, and the cause, Regulate to Rise, and also obviously Align Remedy. Thank you so much for watching or for listening. Until next time, have a good one.